One of the big stories I did talk about was Max Verstappen getting banned in iRacing. As you can see here, we had 20 of the top Pro Series Porsche drivers banned outright for contravening and breaking the sporting code regulations for warming up. There is his name there, number 12, Max Verstappen, and he got the ban right next to his name. This was eventually overturned, but not before some drama really started out there in the world. It was pretty crazy what was happening. There was a change in rules, and then what happened is you really couldn't get your tyres warmed up the way they'd like to. So yeah, this bloke here from what? Forget where he's from. Logitech. He runs an eSports team, and he was livid, massively livid. He said teams affected many significantly. I can see a boycott happening. So this is how bad this was. The road scene has had enough of iRacing's inability to manage a series and treat people fairly with a clear rule set to begin with. Remember, people are paying big bucks to play iRacing. Subscription fees, they pay for the tracks. So I'm not surprised this was the outrage we saw. With a clear rule set to begin with and respond appropriately, this isn't the first issue, and enough is enough. So what happened was something changed with the rule set with warming up, because people found if you did burnouts, you would warm the tyres up better. Something to do with a physics change or something. But, sort of behind the scenes, iRacing changed the rules and said you have to be moving during warm-up. You cannot stay stationary at any point. So because all these people were caught doing burnouts and breaking the sporting code regulations, they were just banned. And it was something, it was a change that happened overnight, and no one was told about it. So heaps of people called out. Not talking about it being expensive, Jeff. I'm talking about, if you've spent years invested in iRacing, if you've spent years honing your craft on iRacing, for something this significant to happen, where I can understand their frustration that the rule happened so quickly that there wasn't a huge announcement or anything. Like, yeah, you could argue it is the driver's responsibility to then go and, read those rules. But when something changes, there should be a better way to communicate it than on a sub forum. Adapt and move on, you say. Well, they're not crying about the physics changes. They're crying about the action iRacing took with the rule. They were happy to adapt. That's not the problem. The problem was the warming up was getting people called out, and when they changed that rule, the communication wasn't there, so they just went, "We're just going to ban you." And this was just a qualifying race. This wasn't, it wasn't a huge thing really. They could have just said, "We will, I don't know, run the event again," or just, "We won't, retroactively start that rule now." Heaps of people got called out. And I can see their frustration. If you do spend years paying for iRacing, that's a lot of money in the long run. I love iRacing, don't get me wrong, but, if this was happening to me... Anyway, he went on to say, for all the good work iRacing commercial team do in structuring deals, such as the eNASCAR deal, including Porsche and the recent NASCAR Boost, there we go, the system is entirely let down by the competition management. For once and for all, make the change while there is still a competition base to draw down on. No action will result in the top end of competition moving to other simulation titles, and I can see why that would happen. Or perhaps worse still, boycott the Porsche Series, leaving you with egg on your face, much like the Le Mans stopping on the main straight due to network issues. I tried to find out what he was talking about there, but I don't know. I wasn't following the scene that closely, obviously, when that happened. But he went on to say, is that the only way that we can respond? When will reason come into the equation? How much stuff-ups need to occur in order to make a change? Let's hope sanity prevails and this travesty of an issue can be resolved. And it eventually was. but not after a lot of frustration. See, this guy, you can't penalize people for using every legitimate possibility that the sim offers, especially when there are a new update physics-wise. The limits have always been explored to the max, and that's a normal thing to do. I agree. Again, I don't think they're worried about the physics changing. I don't think they're bitching about that. They found a way to warm up the tires, but then that rule changed, caught everyone out. And if you're not going to communicate the rule change and then just start banning people, that's not how you should run things. This guy reckons, though, a boycott wouldn't happen. There are already 20 people qualified from last year. 100,000 is a lot of money. If the rule said don't stop forward momentum and you went to 0 kilometers an hour, you get banned. 0 is 0. Black and white. That is something I always talk about when I do the Formula One podcasts, and we're sitting here arguing about rules or changes or a decision from the stewards. But I also think that common sense should prevail in this situation. And again, common sense here would say, make sure everybody knows about the rule change, because they're not doing this just to cheat. Simon went on to say he wouldn't be so sure of the 20 already qualified. Many were disappointed and frustrated with last year, which is interesting to hear. Now their teammates are being completely screwed by the man. Some people will be loyal to the money, but some will be loyal to their teammates and the principle of it all. So I can see why that's happening. Yeah, but there was a lot of bans happening. It eventually did get fixed. So what happened was the tire model was broke for qualifying. So drivers slow down, some stop, some not, and do burnouts and getting heat in the tire. Community pointed that out. iRacing noticed, declared a rule. iRacing banned people. That is just... the way they went about it was too harsh. Which said, don't do burnouts. You first ban people and disqualify them from future PEC. This is it. Also, communication only in the sub forum, not possible to see for everyone. That is the issue, communication. But in the end, common sense did prevail. Here we go. Sanity prevailed. iRacing, however, I hope there are measures in place so that in future these types of situations can be managed proactively rather than being reactive. And that's the issue sometimes. There was a lot of stress and pain for what ultimately was play on. So everybody unbanned. Max Verstappen unbanned. But yeah, iRacing, this sort of happened with the... do you remember the issue with the what do you call off-track count for the Spa race? Just inconsistencies here and there. It's unfair. I don't know. And when you're paying money, I don't care if it's cheap. I don't care if you're paying a lot of money or you're paying a little bit amount of money. If you're paying money for a service, and then that happens, I can understand the frustration.